this is the huge accomplishment here with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Cowabunga collection out this week. I streamed this thing. I just jumped into it like, yeah, I'll jump around to some of those old games. Because how many, you want to run down the games real quick, not to put you on the spot, but what's all in this?
Oh, yeah, sure. So for the NES, the 4 NES games, Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game, 3 Manhattan Project, and then Tournament Fighters. On the Genesis, there's Hyperstone Heist, and then the Genesis version of Tournament Fighters. On the SNES, there's Turtles in Time, and the SNES version of Tournament Fighters. There's 3 Game Boy games, which are Fall of the Foot Clan, Back from the Sewers, and Radical Rescue. And then, of course, the 2 arcade games, which are the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and then Turtles in Time, the arcade version.
Love
13
it.
games plus the 11 Japanese. It is way too many, because then we also had the 11 Japanese variations of those games as well. So it's really 24 games, if you want to call it that.
It is mind-boggling.
I want to tell you my experience just a little bit with it, because I love Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 Back from the Sewers, the Game Boy game, the second Game Boy game, because it was like one of my first Game Boy games, right? I had that and like Mario, 6 Golden Coins, and Tetris. And so I downloaded it, and I was like, well, this is the niche one. Like, this is for me. I went and played it and beat it, and I was like, surely they don't have anything for this one. Right. I mean, this is like the most minor one. And I was like, honestly blown away that I was like, oh my God, I remember looking at this booklet as a kid. I remember the book. You guys have like concept art for a Game Boy Ninja Turtles sequel game that I since I've tweeted about it, I now feel like, you know, David Cross and Arrested Development, where it's like there are dozens of us. Like, I'm finding the people who are huge fans of that game. But like the fact that you guys went into that much detail, even for what I felt like was one of the minor games, like really surprised me, and I was very impressed. So compliments to you guys.
Well, it's not just about like, you know, just I mean, first of all, yes, absolutely. Like, every one of these games is somebody's favorite. Every one of these games is a game somebody grew up with. So that's why we really wanted to make sure every single game was in here, because, you know, not just because people will be like, well, where's this game? Where's that game? But because that, you know, these games, really are special to people. There's people who didn't have consoles, but they had a Game Boy. And so they put 40 to 100 hours into Fall of the Foot Clan. And then beyond that, just the fact that we were able to get, as you say, I mean, all these design documents and things like that from the Konami archives, we were blown away with what Konami had saved and what they had available to us and could get to us. And then, you know, to go through it all and sort it all out and, add all the translations to it so you can really read through it. Even if you're not a huge fan of that game, it is a amazing window into the design processes, you know, that these guys at Konami used back in the day to design these 8 and 16-bit games or even Game Boy games. You can see the behind the scenes. You never get to see that.
It's unbelievable.
I could finally learn why Shredder pranced instead of walked for whatever reason. He has this really awkward like prance. And I finally have insight to that. As a child, I just thought I would never learn.
Yeah, I mean, that's the experience is booting up this thing and jumping around to the games and then just being like, okay, what do they have for museum stuff? And it is just on another level. It is unbelievable. And then
too much.
Yeah, and then it also has comic books, like the entire, like every TMNT show, and I was like, hang on, are they gonna have the full episodes in here? It's like, okay, but they have stills from all the seasons, but were you pushing for the episodes, or you want to talk about like the limits?
No, that was something. So we wanted to have the screenshots. So the idea is, and what really ties this all together is, so there's like nearly 2,000 individual elements that are in the Turtles Lair, which is the museum for this game.
Yeah.
And there's to help you find all of that stuff, there's a search feature. And so you can actually you can click radio buttons in the search feature, and you can say, I want to find all of the magazine advertisements for 16-bit games that feature April O'Neil, and it'll basically it'll pull that right up for you. Yeah, exactly right. And it'll pull that right up for you. And the best part about that is that all of the individual show screenshots and comic book covers are involved in this as well. And what that means is, okay, great. Now you can compare. So if you want to look up the character Rex 1 from the from Ninja Turtles 2, Back from the Sewers, is the robot that you have to fight when you lose a turtle and you want to rescue them and get them back. You can now go ahead and see. I mean, not only can you find design documents for that Rex 1 fight, but you can see what Rex 1 looked like in the cartoon because that screenshot is in there. So if you want to compare and contrast between the video games and the comics and the cartoons, individual characters, that's something that you can do as well.
Your all's work over there, I mean, it's just proof that dorks have won. The fact that something like this can exist and it can be so thorough, it's like, okay, you have proven that it's financially viable to pack this much dorky content of like, yeah, just old magazine scans of ads. It is just a ridiculous treasure trove of stuff.
And it, it's not without its cost, because it's like people have to work on this stuff. We have to get paid to do it. And not only that, but, when we get so much stuff, it's like, okay, well, now we have to use a bigger Nintendo Switch card, for the physical game release,
really?
And like that creates a cost as well. And so the important thing is, when it gets out there and the players see it and they like it and they say, oh, I've spent hours, looking through the Turtles Lair content, as I'm seeing people say on Twitter. It all makes it worthwhile to have spent the literal, like, a lot of money, in making this happen.
Yeah. Okay. The part that really blew my mind, and I'm curious if you found this as well, Kyle, but you can jump into all these games and then there's an option just to watch the game being played, which I think is incredible. And like, my first thought is like, this would be kind of fun just to like put on at the background of a party. Just like, here's just all these old Turtles games being played. It's going to just be a wave of nostalgia for you. But then the part that truly is mind-boggling is at any point as you're scrubbing through and playing that as just a video, you can just take the controls and jump in and start playing. And it's not like it's going to load you to that level. This is mind-boggling. How is that possible?
Because it's not a video. It's an emulator, playthrough that's going on, and all we have to do is just sort of stop where it's happening, and then you can just take control.
So did you guys have to find someone to like play the game through?
One of our designers did, and the thing is that we also have save and load, and we also have the rewind function. So the person doing the watch mode playthroughs has access to rewind and save load and stuff like that. Actually, on a Blizzard Arcade Collection, which we did last year, Drew Scanlon actually did the playthroughs.
Oh, that's
and it's
awesome.
like you can, once you have rewind, it makes it, and that's why we love the rewind function in these games as well, is because it really makes it a lot easier to go through these games when you can say, "Oops, I messed up. Let me rewind and start again." But it also it's this like perfect playthrough that it would be very, very difficult for a human being to sit down and do a no-hit run through on these games, but we do it so that when you do it functions as like a level select. I mean, you can just jump to wherever you want to practice a certain area of the game, and when you do that, you will be there with full health. So essentially, you're in a good position to practice that area if you want to.
Yeah.
And then you're right. There is we present these games as, think of this as like a coffee table book of historical artifacts. We want to be able to just sort of let you watch the game be played through as well. I mean, that's sort of part of encountering it as a historical artifact as well, because it's not it's putting too much on a person, a historian, or a casual sort of observer to say, okay, here's the game, now play through it yourself. It's like, to be able to look at it and see what's going on there, it essentially makes this like a history book of Turtles games.
That's how I experienced the NES version of Ninja Turtles last night, because I'm like untold number of kids, back then. I'm sure I never got past the water level because it's ridiculous, and it was still ridiculous trying to play it through it last night. And it was just mind-boggling to see a no-hit run of that entire game in the first place, but then also, going back, because the rewind feature is a blessing, but even then I still failed the water level the first time because there's a 2-minute time limit to it. And so I was just losing too much time, as I was doing the run. But then when I played through it again, I could jump right into the strategy guide that has, like the full layout to see where all the different bombs are that you have to defuse it. And it was such a weird kind of wonderful melding of remembering this thing from my childhood and actually finally being able to overcome it. And then, I didn't play the entire thing, but then watching the rest of it, played by this perfect run through is just so awesome.
For a lot of people, Well, I see some people like, oh, I'm finally going to beat Turtles 1. You know, this is this thing I've never been able to do as a kid. I'm finally going to do it. And for some people, it's like, I'm finally just going to beat the damn level. Like once I get through that underwater level, I'm good. I'm done.
Yeah.
How many of these kind of collections have you worked on now at Digital Eclipse?
So this is my third. We had the Blizzard Arcade Collection, which came out at the beginning of 2021, which was like Lost Vikings, Blackthorn, and Rock and Roll Racing, of course. And then we did an update to Disney Classic Games Collection, where we added the SNES version of Aladdin into the game that already existed, plus the Jungle Book, and that came out at the end of 2021. So I've got this, and then a couple of months from now, in November, we're going to have Atari 50, the anniversary celebration, which is basically imagine like we take the games and we take the museum content, and there's no more games in museum. Now it's all one big interactive historical experience where you go through the timeline of Atari, essentially from the founding all the way to the end of the Atari Jaguar era, basically. And on this timeline that you're scrolling through, you have artifacts, you've got design documents and boxes and stuff like that, but then you also have games, and the games are put in the chronological place that they would be. So even as you're sort of scrolling through the game list, you're sort of learning about Atari history. And a lot of what that is that with the Atari games, especially now, like, you know, almost 50 years later for some of these games, almost 50 years for a lot of them, you know, we might want to sit down and play Ninja Turtles Radical Rescue for a few hours, but like there's fewer and fewer people who want to sit down and play like Asteroids for a few hours.
Right.
But if it's integrated into this museum type experience where it's like, this is why Asteroids is important. Try it for yourself. Pew, pew, pew. Okay, that was fun. I'm going to go back to the museum now and keep going.
I love it.
It essentially creates this sort of like interactive learning, you know, historical fun kind of experience. And like that's sort of like, that's what we're trying to do now with Atari 50 and then sort of later collections as well.
Yeah. Do you feel like you're all moving in that direction of trying to make those more and more seamless, the distinction between kind of the gallery area and the games? Do you eventually just want to get to the point of like, we're just making documentary video games at this point?
Yeah, exactly. That's precisely it. And so, and you'll even see, I mean, we're going to start getting into self-publishing some stuff as well. You're going to see us like completely unfettered by anybody else's expectations and just able to do whatever crazy stuff it is that we want to do with other games, and just trying many different things in an effort to sort of just rethink all the time like what these things can be.
I love it. I'd love to know about talking and communicating with Konami, getting access to these old files for TMNT. What was that exchange like? How much did they save? All that good stuff.
So I mean, this project kind of started with Konami, and Charles Murakami, our producer at Konami, he had worked with us on Yu-Gi-Oh games before, but he was very, very enthusiastic. I mean, he works in the Konami US office. The previous collections, like the Contra and the Castlevania Anniversary collections, had been managed out of Japan, Japan is not really where the Ninja Turtles are extremely popular. And so, you know, Charles and the US folks were kind of passing back to Japan like, hey, like, we're getting a lot of feedback. Like, people want a Turtles collection. They really, really want this. Charles was very enthusiastic about it's got to be all the games. It has to be all the games because we potentially only have this one shot to do this, right? You know, because it is a licensed property. Like, we can't leave anything on the table. Like, it's got to be everything. And so what kind of happened was Konami was like, okay, Charles, well, you seem very enthusiastic about this, so you do it, you know? And so he really wanted to work with us at Digital Eclipse on this. And so we were very much kind of in lockstep, you know, between us and the team at Konami US, that it had to be everything, and that we wanted just to get every kind of historical piece of information that we could into this and really make it a premium, you know, product. This is not like a $10 downloadable, you know, afterthought type game. Like this is a $40, you know, there's a physical, there's a limited edition. I mean, it's a big AAA, has a AAA marketing spend behind it. You know, it's a big thing. So Charles starts asking around at Konami about like development materials, and starts to hear, well, yeah, we have stuff, but it's in the Konami archive building, which is in Japan, and it's like a multi-hour train ride away from Konami headquarters, and also it is peak COVID when we're asking about this. Nobody's vaccinated yet, so nobody's in the office and nobody's been there in a long time. And we don't really know what we have. So we were planning on, well, what if there's nothing? Like, what if we don't get anything?
Right.
You know, and so that's why you see so much other stuff. I actually had gone to the Strong Museum of Play in Rochester, New York, which has an incredible collection on just the history of toys and games and everything like that, and industry magazines and things. And I got a lot of scans and things like that from the Strong. Spent a week there doing it. And it was like, okay, like we have a lot of stuff going on. We have the boxes and the manuals and the magazine ads. We have this, we have that. And then we hear that, okay, somebody's going to go to the Konami archive and they're going to look for stuff. Okay, great. So Charles ends up like on a FaceTime call. Oh, because by the way, Charles is not even allowed to go into the archive. Like only a select group of people are even allowed to go in there. And what? I'm not on that list and he's not on that list. And yeah, it's super locked down. So he's FaceTiming with somebody who's like allowed to be in there, and they start taking down, binders off of these shelves and opening them up and showing him like on the phone, like these design documents, and he's seeing them for the first time. And they're like, are any of these interesting to you? What sort of stuff is interesting to you? And he's just like, everything, scan everything in that binder. And then they're like, okay. And then they're like, they take down binder number 2. What about this? Everything. Okay. Here's Super NES Tournament Fighters, giant binder for SNES, just SNES Tournament Fighters.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Everything. Okay. Here's binder number 2 for SNES Tournament Fighters, because Tournament Fighters.
That one we can skip. We're good on that one.
Yeah. They had animators doing every frame of animation for all of the fighters, and there was a piece of paper for each frame of animation for each fighter. And so they had them all. And so they scanned like nearly 1,000 documents out of there. And I mean, when I opened up that zip file, that was one of the best days of like my life, because I was like, what is going to be in here? And I just open up this zip file. It's huge. It's full of folders. And I just pick a random folder and just start looking. And my eyes just start watering, because I mean, we're just looking at these design documents that had never been seen in like 30 years. It was incredible. And every single freaking one of them is in the game, because it wasn't let's pick and choose the most interesting things. It's like, no, it's like, let's organize it all. Let's sort it all out. Let's do the very like labor intensive work of, transcribing all of the handwritten Japanese in these things, first of all, then getting it all translated, and then figuring out a way to implement it back into the game. I had to I went to the engineer on the project. I'm like, hey, so what I want to do is I want to have the document on the screen. Then you press a button and it pops up a second layer, and it's like floating text over the document. And it sort of shows, the translations of those things, but I have to be able to put the text where it goes so people understand where the text is and everything. It's like, can we do that? And the engineer is like, can I display text at a given XY coordinate on the screen? Yes. I'm like, right. Yeah. Okay. All right. Great. So he it's like, well, sure. So he built a tool that let me sit down and insert all of these things like page by page without having any, programming knowledge. I could essentially just do it in sort of a graphical user interface type thing. And then we translated into a whole bunch of languages, and then all the text overran all the boxes. So then which we knew was going to happen. And then at that point, everybody banded together. Everybody like took a language, you know what I mean? And just went in and just like resized all the boxes. So, I mean, it looks great, whatever language you're using. And it's just like, you can just sit there for hours, like reading through all of these pages and like finding out all the notes that the designers made on everything. And I mean, it's just for me as a person who buys, collections of old video games, I mean, it was very simple in the sense it's just like, okay, I'm just going to make the thing that I would want the most,
yes.
And just do it that way.
It's so heartwarming to know that Konami has saved all this stuff. I mean, I don't know how it compares to other big Japanese publishers, but like that gives me hope as a huge Sunset Riders fan. Like, do they have old design documents for Sunset Riders, do you think, in that same building?
You know what? I will never know unless if we work on a Sunset Riders collection or something like that.
That might be a little while. It's like Mystic Warriors and Sunset Riders.
Organize a heist.
Kyle, please! How dare you? These are the turtles. They fight crime.
Are you podcasting about the crime you're planning?
Did you have any communication, or did Konami, I don't know, reach out to any of the old developers? I assume they're not still there, people that worked on these old games.
Basically, like a couple of people were still there. I mean, again, so height of COVID, doing interviews would have been extremely difficult. The people that were still there were like, oh yeah, I worked on that. I debugged like this portion of the game or something like that. So it was sort of like made the decision that, video interviews were not going to be something that was part of this based on that.
Gotcha. Do you feel like you understand Konami better after working on this project? I mean, the internet always swirling with like, what is happening within Konami these days? Do you feel like you got a couple good pieces of insight?
You know what? I mean, I again, yes. Well, the fact that I'm really grateful that Konami in Japan has done such a great job of archiving all of this original material, making sure that it's make sure that it's accessible, being able to get it to us, and having it, essentially having it ready, and maintaining it, even when it's something like Turtles, where it's like, what if they never got the Turtles license back? What would they be able to do with that? And certainly we had a tremendous partner in the team at Konami USA, because they really believed in us and they fought for us, and they really understood, like, it was them who had to make the case internally, right, all the time for, no, this is why these guys want to do it this way. Yes, it is more expensive. Yes, it is difficult. Yes, it is going to take longer. But like that is we have to do it this way, and really, articulated that case for us, and so we were really, really happy to work with them.
Yeah, it's amazing. From your perspective, how did you feel about Shredder's Revenge coming out this year as well? I think the internet was on pins and needles for a while, like, which game is coming first? It's weird to have so much turtle brawler action happening next to each other.
Yeah, I think it all worked out great. I think it all worked out great because, Shredder's Revenge, when it did come out, I mean, first of all, it was like phenomenal. I played it with my wife and my older kid, and we just loved it. And not only did it, not only was it great, but the way the nostalgia that it had, or the references that it made, were very specifically to these older games. Like, Shredder's Revenge could have been filled with references to, the TV show or the movies or whatever, but really so much of it was just sort of referring back to what had happened in the Konami classic games. Yeah. So now you have this brand new audience of people who all really enjoyed this turtle brawler, and now it's like, okay, now we can show you where that all came from. So, I mean, I think it just worked out, just set them up and knocked them down. Yeah. It was great.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on the game. It's really
thank you.
Hell of a collection you got rolling on there. Can you explain one thing? And I'm sure this is going to be a 45-minute discussion, but I'm confused. The name of this Digital Eclipse at Other Ocean. I've always been confused about what's Other Ocean, what's Digital Eclipse.
Oh, yeah.
What's going on there?
So, the company, Other Ocean Interactive, that existed, and then Other Ocean got back the Digital Eclipse branding from its previous owners.
Okay.
And then started up Digital Eclipse, sort of as a division to concentrate on, these retro collections specifically. But now pretty much everybody in we're all just going by Digital Eclipse in the Emeryville, California office, and everybody is working on Digital Eclipse branded stuff. And there's other stuff with with like how the company or the subsidiary essentially works that's like above my pay grade. But basically, like what you can see now is that everybody at the Emeryville office and the Washington office as well is like fully devoted to Digital Eclipse projects, and we're kind of like expanding the definition of what a Digital Eclipse project is. Time was like the Space Jam game that we did, for Xbox, right. That would have been considered maybe like an Other Ocean, a licensed type game, but now it's a Digital Eclipse product, and it's like Digital Eclipse is the classic collections, but also games or new games inspired by the classics, are done with that same mentality.
So it's a stronger brand, so it's eclipsing the Other Ocean entirely at this point. Got it.
Yeah, well, there's Other Ocean still definitely exists, but it's not the stuff that we're working on in Emeryville, because there's the Other Ocean office in Canada as well. So you may see Other Ocean branded stuff.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, and fun fact is Kelsey Lewin is a contributor to MinMax here, and it's weird that you guys share the office with Video Game History Foundation there.
Well, it's not that weird, but it's
no,
it
it's
actually
nice.
Makes total sense.
Yeah, it's nice culturally that you two are just simpatico for being dorks for history history and just different avenues of expressing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, of course, Frank Cifaldi was one of the founders of the original, the rebirth of Digital Eclipse, and he left to run the Video Game History Foundation full time and rents the office space, from us. But it's great. I get to see Frank and Kelsey all the time when I go to the office.
That's awesome. If you thought, hey, this video wasn't bad, well, there's a whole lot more like it on MinMax's YouTube channel. Please help us out by subscribing to our channel and checking out the MinMax Show podcast, also available on your favorite podcast app, the best, most thorough discussion about games on the internet with the deepest dive, our monthly community trivia show with prizes called Trivia Tower, and a whole lot more. Thanks so much for your support, everybody. All you gotta do is click that subscribe button. We'd really appreciate it.